I think that we are all saying the same message. Like,
Yeah.
this is why I think we should collaborate as a generation, because we all
Right.
have experienced the same problems to some degree, maybe just in
Yeah.
different forms.
Yeah.
And
Welcome to Siblings Not an Option. I'm Adam Nebbs, and I'm here with my co-host, Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels like they've settled for an unfulfilling life. Whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, or how you feel about yourself, we're here to tell you that settling's not an option. If you're liking the show, please follow us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback about the show or want to recommend a topic, you can email us at cheerstoNotSettling@gmail.com. Finally, to conclude the plug, if you feel so inclined, you can donate to us on Coffee, where we're aiming to buy some new audio equipment. We have a superstar guest on the show today. I'll throw to Amanda now to introduce Sergio.
Yeah, so today we have the pleasure of having Sergio Flores-Garcia on our show. And the way that I know Sergio is that we have been working together on a project, and I just came across him on LinkedIn. I loved his posts, and I felt like we could really connect, or it seemed like we had a lot of common beliefs and values. And I've definitely found that to be true. And to me, Sergio is just a super positive go-getter and just super hard worker. But beyond that, what really has impressed me about Sergio is he has the product that we're working on together. He has really challenged me to make it so much better than I ever imagined that it would be. So, and not very many people challenge me to be better. It's usually the other way around. So that's been really awesome, really a big blessing for me. So that's a little bit about Sergio. And Sergio, did you want to say anything else about yourself before we get started?
of course, yeah, thank you, Amanda. And I feel a little emotional here because I really appreciate the kind words from both of you. Adam, this is the first time I've met you, but I can so far tell that we're going to get along really well. And Amanda, thank you so much. I appreciate you for having me on this podcast, both of you for having me on this podcast. I had the pleasure of working with you, like you said previously, and I know quite a bit about you and where your mindset is at, and I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I mean, I'm so excited to be here. I'm just a little bit about myself, just so the audience can know if anybody's from Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I'm from Wyoming. I know that's pretty rare sometimes. Someone being from Wyoming. But yeah, I'm from Wyoming in a little small town called Jackson Hole, right under Yellowstone. I'm currently the operator of a residential cleaning business and also do marketing on the side. So I help business owners and personal brands with their marketing and as far as content creation and website development. And it's been such a blast, and I'm loving every second of it. And like Amanda says, you got to stay curious. So we're gonna keep doing that. So I appreciate you both for having me.
That's right. I appreciate you. Yeah, I saw you use my tagline, "Stay curious," today.
Of course.
On LinkedIn. I'm like, hey, someone's stealing my tagline. No, that was awesome. All right, so yeah. All right, so what we're going to focus on in the show today is understanding generations X, Y, and Z, because we have representatives from each generation here on the show today. And when Adam and I were talking about having Sergio on, I just thought that would be a really fun conversation for us to have, because I'm the old one of the group. So I'll just throw out our ages quick, just so. So I'm 43, going on 44. Adam's 32. 32. I tried to make Adam 33, but he's 32. And Sergio
you wanted to round me up so we had even numbers.
I love.
Well, yeah, I wanted us all to be 10 years apart, but it's close enough.
It's close enough. I'm 23, but I could be 22 for this one if we want to do even numbers.
No way.
To need.
You already made me feel old enough, so no. but no, so I just thought it'd be fun to have this conversation. And so we're going to use the format what we usually use when it's just Adam and I, and try to 3 topics, 3 15-minute segments, and we're going to see how it goes. So we're each going to answer. Well, I put together 3 questions that we're each going to answer. So that's going to be the topic, I suppose. So we're going to get our timer started. You got yours started, Adam?
Yep, I'll hit start.
All right. So the first question, and I get to have the pleasure of answering it first, is the first question is the biggest challenge your generation is facing or has faced, and tips for overcoming this challenge. And this one's a pretty easy one to answer for me because I actually think the biggest challenge for Generation X is just understanding millennials, or Generation Y is also millennials, and Generation Z, because I really feel like our generation has not understood your guys' generation very well and doesn't really care to. And I think it's going to become a bigger and bigger problem because my generation is now the manager of your guys' generations a lot of times, not 100% of the time. And so I just think that's something that we need to get over and take the time to have a better understanding. How about you, Adam? What's your biggest challenge for your generation?
Well, yeah, I think it feeds quite well into that. I mean, I think my generation's gripe is with the baby boomers, because the baby boomers ruined the world. They made everything really expensive. Like, the biggest challenges are like house prices, and like we don't earn as much as I suppose those previous generations might have. Like, I feel like I'm not as angry with the Generation X as I am with the baby boomers, but maybe that's just because, maybe that's just because there's been a lot of bad press around the baby boomers. But I think the biggest challenge is because it's like such a tricky world out there. Like, a lot of people settle in the work they do because they get in the money trap, which is something that I've done, and I see so many people around me do that are millennials, which is like, I just need to make as much money as possible. And I feel like the issue with that is you end up doing things that don't give you meaning and purpose and can make you quite miserable. Yeah. So I think, a good piece of advice would be, don't get in that money trap. You need to kind of break away from that and realize that taking a step back and finding what you're really passionate and purposeful, what's really passionate and purposeful for you is what's going to ultimately make the money for you in the end. Don't just jump into something because of money. I think would be the issue we've had in our generation, maybe.
All right, perfect. Sergio, you're up. Oh, but you're mute. Okay, there you go. I was going to say, I think you know you're muted.
Yeah. No, no, I appreciate the reminder, but so this is a wonderful question. I think for this question, I might say it's FOMO, and if anybody out there in the audience doesn't know what that is, it's fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. And I think it goes along with instant gratification. We, as a Generation Z, we've grown up with technology and have been accustomed to it. So a lot of the things that we've grown up with are fast and just instant. Yeah. So a lot of times that could be a problem as far as just life goes overall, because a lot of things in life require patience and time, and that's something that I've definitely learned. But it's just so easy to get caught up in FOMO and instant gratification for us because of technology. I mean, it's just so fast. Like, we have everything at an instant, and then fear of missing out because everything's on social media. I mean, everybody posts their life on social media, like mainly the highlights of it, so everything seems so fun. And then once we get in our moments of things not going well for us, we look to social media and see everybody else doing so good that we kind of get sad or feel like we're missing out on our own lives. So I definitely think for that answer, it's fear of missing out, which just goes along with instant gratification.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'll circle back to both of your answers because they both played off of mine. Or I think the reason that my generation gets frustrated with your guys' generations is because we have kind of straddled both, where we grew up without technology, but I mean, not the kind of technology we had today by any means, but we've seen the technology come along, and my generation actually created a lot of the technology that we're using today. So we're, well aware of it, but we've seen both sides. And so I think we get frustrated because although we definitely have FOMO ourselves, and we definitely get caught in the money trap ourselves too. But I think that we grew up maybe having more patience because we had to. And not that we haven't lost patience now that we have these other devices, but I think we'll look at you guys and say, well, okay, you're not going to be a manager of this company the day you walk in the door. Why don't you understand that? Or like, like that you want the instant gratification and things. And to us, it's so obvious that you're not going to get instant gratification. And why would you think that you possibly would? And so it seems like there's always a big divide there. And I'm just thinking back about just different complaints that I've heard. Of course, I work for myself now, so I don't work in an office. But when I did work in an office, yeah, I would say that people my age and older definitely complained about your guys' generations a lot. And it was that they thought not only that you didn't have the patience, but that you were lazy, or that you were somehow felt entitled. And I don't believe that at all. Like, that's not how I see things. But I guess I'd like to get your guys' thoughts on that too. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I would just like to pick up on that. Just the last part as far as entitlement goes.
Yeah.
I think that there is some sort of entitlement, and I don't think that it's necessarily anybody's fault. I just think that, specifically in the United States, we've been able to live such prosperous lives, especially after the recession in 2008. Like, most of the people in Generation Z didn't get to really experience the hardships of that.
Yeah.
And including myself, I was really young, so I didn't really understand it at the time. And so now that we've all grown up, it seems like we almost entitled to a lot of things, which in reality, it's not true. I don't believe personally that we, necessarily deserve everything, but at the same time, it makes sense why, a lot of people feel this entitlement in our Generation Z, because we haven't had to fight for really struggles, or everybody has struggles, but not that deep like our parents did during that recession period. So maybe that's where the entitlement comes from. And there's also two sides to it. Like, there's also we want to get after things, we want to make things happen fast. We want to have things happen already. This goes back to instant gratification. But I would say that there is some sort of entitlement to it. And I think that as we grow up, we're going to see why we feel that way and how to overcorrect that. As far as for me, it totally had that entitlement back when I was a teenager. I felt like everything should be handed, and even though I worked hard, I felt like I should expect these things to happen to me, which is totally not true about life. But that's just as far as adding on to that piece.
No, that's very helpful. Yeah, because it's good to know that at least you're aware. But really, that's important for other generations to understand that maybe there is some entitlement, but there's a reason for it, and there's awareness of it. So, what do you have to say,
That's
Adam?
a really good point.
Yeah.
I like the, both the millennials and the Gen Zs, the culture is all about social media, and everything's moving so quickly. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I think it's always just going to keep speeding up, and it's just going to be an individual responsibility as to how you slow yourself down, because we're not going to slow down the whole society. It's just not going to happen. But yeah, you're right. I think there is entitlement, but
in
it isn't our fault.
Would you say you feel your generation feels entitled also?
I do think the entitlement did start to set in during the millennials, and is probably more rampant now in Gen Z. But I think you're right. It's because we are used to getting everything straight away. So in the workplace, those kind of beliefs that you have to work over a number of years to kind of work your way up the ladder or whatever, that's gone now, because you're conditioned every day to, I just need to access something on my phone and I can get news straight away, or with everything you do, you get it straight away. So why wouldn't it be the same in the workplace, you know? And that would cause a lot of frustration for millennials and Gen Zs, because you're thinking, well, hold on a minute, like the world's telling me I get everything straight away. I come into the workplace, the Gen Xers start saying, no, get back in your lane, calm down. We're not giving you a promotion yet. You've only been here for 2 months.
Like, we don't even know you.
Yeah.
Slow down there.
I can remember working in the bank, and we would have these manager meetings where we'd all sit down and we would talk about these people that were, I suppose they would be Gen Zers, and we'd be going, oh, like she's been here for 2 months and she thinks she runs the show. Like, who is this girl? And we would sit there and actually bitch about these people.
Yeah.
We wouldn't take the time to, even as millennials, I suppose, in the room, we wouldn't take the time to try and understand why, you know, these people might be pushing to get promotions and things. So I think it's not just Gen X that needs understanding. I think it's all generations need to challenge their understanding of other generations.
Sure.
Maybe.
100%.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously there's commonalities between all the generations, but yeah, we did all grow up in different times, but we all bring our own talents, gifts, I don't know what you want to call it, natural abilities to the table. Yeah. And if you can gain some kind of understanding of each other, I mean, just think of if you put all those pieces together, what a great company, great country, great world, whatever you could build. Because I see your guys' strengths as being that you're a lot more, I feel like you guys, even though you've grown up in this world where maybe you feel entitled and have all this instant access to everything, I do feel like you're a lot more compassionate though than our generation is. And I feel like you're a lot more collaborative, which is huge, because I feel like my generation is a lot more independent, which is not a bad thing, but it doesn't always make us very collaborative. We just want to work on our own and get our work done. And so that's the other reason I think that we really need to all kind of come together and learn how to collaborate with you guys a little bit better.
I definitely would love to add to that. It's just, I mean, personally, I believe like we should collaborate all together. Yeah. I mean, we have, you know, different types of experiences, and, you know, we're not so different from each generation. I mean, you know, from Generation X to Generation Y to Generation Z, the generations above us all probably were like, oh, this next generation, they're so like this and they're so that. And it's such a repeating trend that for me, I've tried to work so hard to really, you know, stop it like that. I mean, I have younger nieces and nephews, and I feel like I try to settle down and understand that position. I remember one thing about, I was talking to one of my nieces, and I was trying to, I guess, you know, be that guidance for them, and because they're a lot younger than me, they're in high school, and I was trying to tell them kind of some tips and advice. And, you know, she kind of stopped me, and she's like, "Hey, I'm just trying to live my life." And I remember myself saying that to my
I'm
mom.
Just trying to live my life.
And I remember the exact same words came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
When I was that age.
Yeah.
So it's like this realization of like, wow, like I'm being that generation that's above me, that's trying to, you know, even though I'm mean the best way to give advice, but it may not come out the same way where they could understand. And that's why I think for, you know, we'll all eventually get there. Our younger selves are not going to get that most of the times. But, you know, once we grow up, we see like, oh, okay, that's what they were trying to give me advice about. Oh, that's what they meant. And, you know, but it's always about being more collaborative, because I think we could definitely stop the trend of like, oh, it's going to be this generation's fault. Like this generation does this, or this generation does that. I think we could just be all, you know, human beings and work together.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, that's a great way to end the segment, because we're about there. So we can all just be human beings. There we go. I like it.
Yes.
All right. So the next question is well, I didn't word this very well, but whatever. So it should say, what should your goal in life be according to your generation? And have you embraced it or pushed against it? So I'll go first. I just got to reset my timer here a second though. So I would say, and it's funny because my answer was kind of going to be what Adam said in his first answer, but I feel like Generation X, we started out thinking our purpose was to go to college. Like I would just remember like that was huge. Like it was just really pushed on us. So you had to go to college. You had to get a good job. You had to start a family, buy a house, all this stuff. And so then when you were talking, Adam, when you were talking about the money trap, it reminded me of that. But then I think a lot of us kind of started on that path and did that. And then we got into our 30s and started realizing that maybe that wasn't quite right. And I think what we should be doing kind of shifted. And we started to figure out that what we should be doing is trying to find some work-life balance, because our parents didn't have work-life balance, really. They worked, and I mean, we were the latchkey kids. Like I'm sure you've heard that term. And now I'm over explaining, and I probably should just let you guys answer. But the point of that is, so the latchkey kids were called that because after school you had a key to get in the house because your parents were not home, and we had very little adult supervision. And I can remember that. But anyways, so the point is, our parents didn't have the work-life balance. So we weren't taught that, but I think we started to form that as we got older. So how about you, Adam?
I think the goal of our generation is like you need to break the mold in everything you do, and you need to like contribute to quickening the pace of life almost. Because I think every time people are talking about millennials, it's always like the millennials that have created these new apps, or entrepreneurs who have like changed the whole course of how the world's going, and it's always like, you know, creating technology that makes things quicker. And so there's always a pressure to be like, all right, if you're part of the millennials, you know, you need to be groundbreaking. You can't be part of that old system, you know, because that's what the goal is, and that's what millennials do well. And there's a lot of pressure there, I think, for millennials. Like I don't have a creative brain to be able to sit there and kind of build the system. For me, it's like, I want to slow down, and I'm quite happy with what things have come before, and getting involved in those, because I really like analyzing things. So I feel like I've always pushed against that goal. Yeah. And I feel that would be the struggle for a lot of millennials is, you know, you're always in the shadow of these like big giants, you know, like the Mark Zuckerbergs or whatever it'd be, who have become like giant shifters in society. And if you're not up to that standard, you start to maybe go, oh, I don't know if I'm kind of contributing to the millennials as well as these other people. Yeah. But that's the pressure I think that millennials are under, maybe.
Okay.
So for this question, a couple things come to mind, but I think the biggest one, maybe this is just me as a Generation Z, but I think it's focusing on happiness and focusing on specifically what makes you happy. I think we as a Generation Z, with technology and everything, have such a great opportunity of doing this.
Yeah.
Because before, past generations, you know, they had to be lawyers or had to be, you know, go from college directly to a corporate job. Like that was just the reality of it.
Right.
Like, the internet and social media wasn't a thing. And so these more creative outlets, like being a YouTuber, being a TikToker, being an influencer, these things weren't really a thing. Or that you could make a company of cookie dough and just from scratch and just post it on social media and grow your business. Like that wasn't really a thing for other generations. So I think that it's more possible than ever to chase your own happiness and to really focus on yourself and your own journey. And you know, speaking from even Adam's point of view, like you know, in a way it is speeding things up, but I think it is also just taking a step back and realizing like what we have at our hands, like the tools that we have, to focus on our happiness and not having to you know, like you said, Amanda, like focus on a work-life balance, not just having to, work. Actually, can be able to enjoy our work and enjoy, life.
Yeah.
So that's I think the biggest thing that my generation can focus on.
Well, and that's huge because, see, my generation X, whatever you want to call it, we were not taught to focus on happiness, I don't feel like, at all. and Adam and I have had these conversations too about, because we have younger kids and what they're learning in school now, like they're learning mindfulness techniques and all this stuff that it's like, we never, not even close. I mean, that was not even on the radar for us. Like you said, Sergio, it was like you go to school, you become a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. Like this is what we were supposed to do. It was how we were taught to start out, or at the beginning anyway. And so I found it really interesting that you said to focus on happiness because, well, I guess it's interesting. It also kind of scares me a little bit. And here's why, because I feel like then people start chasing happiness. And when you're chasing happiness, you're just going to end up unhappy.
Yeah.
So I guess it's encouraging and scary at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, just to contextualize that, I think rather than chasing happiness, focusing on your happiness. I think let's not put happiness over this border of, I'm going to get this career, I'm going to get this job, and then I'll be happy. I mean, focus on happiness as your foundation, but enjoy the things that you do in everyday life to get you to happiness. Like Adam said, you don't want to be in this money trap.
Yeah.
Like this money trap, money will come eventually. Money is important because it pays your bills, but it's not the only thing that is important. And I think as a generation, we have the ability to focus on our happiness and actually be, like you said, be in these mindful classes, like focus on our mental health. Like, are we feeling good rather than oppose, like, let's get this career going. Let's build these accomplishments and just do that for our life,
Yeah. See, and that's very encouraging to me. Yeah. But what are you thinking over there, Adam?
Well, I was just thinking about what you were saying, Sergio, about like using technology, like that it doesn't have to maybe be a bad thing, that you can maybe use it with more purpose. So like, for example, like Instagram, I think about Instagram, and like that can be a really destructive thing that really overwhelms you, right? Like if you set it up in the, with a bunch of influencers that maybe are driving really bad agendas, that can really stress you out and make you sad. But then the good thing with Instagram in particular is you can design it to be something that really boosts you up, like some really great quotes on mindfulness or some like really good spiritual teachers or whatever it is. Like, I think that's a case where I used to have an Instagram account that was really quite abusive to me, that I'd look at and, I'd have all these people, Floyd Mayweather, or, like people are all just driven by money, and I'd be like, oh, I'm not to that standard. And that would get me down. Whereas now I've got like all these, I don't know, just great mindful people, the Dalai Lama, or like these Buddhist quotes, or whoever it be. And it just actually makes me feel really good when I sit there, because I think for both the millennials and Gen Zs, we're always going to be on our phone scrolling repeatedly. Like we can't, we're going to try and buck against that. But unfortunately, it's something that is ingrained into us now, maybe from a chemical perspective or whatever. So we've got to now figure, all right, well, what's good for me to keep me in a good headspace? Maybe remove the Floyd Mayweathers or the Conor McGregors or whatever that you used to have on there. So I don't know. That's my thoughts, but yeah.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just quickly to add to that, I know that probably to our next segment, but just quickly add to that, I think we got
about 6 minutes, so we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just really quick thought, because I think I totally agree, Adam. I think social media can totally be bad for anybody's mental health, as far as, when I started, like FOMO, like fear of missing out, this instant gratification, this thing of like, you look at Instagram, you scroll through it, everybody else is living their best lives, and you're look at your own situation and you're just like, wow, why am I not there? I think that's a really big challenge for Generation Z and millennials, for sure, because it's a lot of comparison more than, but I think at the same time, it's not really something that's growing. Like it's not like this growing problem. I think it's just exposing more of like these root problems that we've already had as human beings. Like we've
Right.
always been, kind of envious of what our neighbors have had and what our neighbors possess. And I think it goes to a rudimentary problem of just being able to stop comparing ourselves to one another and start and like being grateful for what we have. And social media, it can be this great tool that you use to better yourself. It's just how you use it. And
Yeah.
I think that, it's that slippery slope because you can fall on either side really quickly. At the same time, I think that we're moving towards an era of where we're going to look more of how can we better ourselves through social media
Yeah.
and focus on these mental health problems that social media causes while being able to use it like in a useful manner, not just in a detriment way of like being envious of others or putting ourselves down because we don't have something.
Yeah.
That's
and it
a
seems
really
like
good
it
point.
is going that way. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
sorry.
probably just think it's going that way because that's how my feed is. but yeah.
I like what you're saying though, Sergio,
Yeah.
because this is a trap that we get into as well, which is like social media is the reason why we're unhappy. But what you're saying is no, there was always that level of envy. It's just now in our face.
Right.
So really, it's a double-edged sword. One, it's, you can create an abusive relationship with your social media where you constantly compare yourself to others and get upset. But it also is a great tool for kind of fleshing out. You probably have a part of you that is envious and jealous and will compare yourself to others. And that awareness will help you break free from that. Whereas maybe the earlier generations that, I don't know, I don't want to assume something, but maybe they hid that part of themselves. They were feeling envious, but they never embraced it. So it was always there, bubbling under the surface, influencing their behavior. So it's probably a good and a bad thing. And it's on us to manage it effectively, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, so I'm the only generation who grew up without.
Yeah, we're kind of picking on you now.
I never had internet in my house until I was 20, I think 20. So, but we had the envy, obviously, but we could leave it because, we might envy, like I might envy this girl at school who has nicer clothes than me, but once I'm at home, it's gone. And so the envy was there, but it wasn't in your face as much. And so I think you're absolutely right, though, that we weren't forced to face it. And so I think if people can become aware enough to face it, that's huge. And that would get back to what Sergio said about then you can start creating a more positive environment on social media. But one thing I wanted to get back to before we run out of time is Adam, because you had talked about breaking the mold. Like you felt like you had to be groundbreaking. Okay, I never felt like that. So that was really interesting to me to hear you say that. And do you still feel that way, or?
No, I think maybe it was the way I read the question, because it was more around what should the what is the goal that say the millennials should have, what's being touted in society as the millennials goal.
I think you're right.
That's how I phrased it, because I've never felt the need to break the mold. I love the mold. Leave the mold as it is, because breaking the mold for me stresses me out. So no thanks. But I feel like every time I listen to someone talk about millennials, it's like, oh, look, they're all entrepreneurs. They've all come up with a new app and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that must cause pressure for some people to be like, oh, I need to come up with an app.
I need to come up with an app.
But, I've had moments where I've walked around, for example, and I was like, I wonder if I can make an app from something, right? And I looked around the garden and I was like, I don't know what these flowers are in the garden. Oh my God, imagine an app where you can take a photo of a flower and it tells you what the flower is. There's already an app being created for it. So I was quite sad. I don't think there's any apps left there in the world. Like anything you think of, it's already been thought of, not to discourage the millennials. But, there is a pressure there, right? Which is you need to be groundbreaking. Like you guys are the shakers and the movers. And there'll be people out there that won't be shakers and movers that might get a little bit down on themselves, being like, why couldn't I create the next big thing? So, yeah, I don't feel like that at all. I'm very happy to stick with the bold.
Well, I think that's a really good thing to understand, because I think that's part of the frustration maybe that the Xers and the baby boomers have, is they don't understand that pressure was put on you guys. Whether it's self-inflicted or not, the pressure is still there, because we never had that. So, all right, so that's about the end of that segment. So that was good timing. All right, on to the last question, which is, oh, there we go. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the past year that you think could add value to your generation's lives? And the biggest lesson that I've learned, and I think that she's in my generation, I'm pretty sure, but I learned this from a good friend of mine. Her name's Olivia De Silva, so I'll shout her out here. But the lesson is to be still and to give yourself space and create space for yourself. And what that really means is that you give yourself space to think, you give yourself space to learn who you are and to figure out what you want out of life, and also just to give yourself space to feel what you're feeling in the moment, instead of just trying to push your feelings down all the time and think that you shouldn't be feeling this way, and so you just got to get over it and move on to the next thing. Because that's another thing, I don't think my generation really learned how to deal with their feelings very well. And we like to just push them down and pretend that we don't have them. And so I think giving yourself that space to sit with yourself and feel your feelings is super important. How about you, Adam?
Well, I think the millennials, don't worry, the millennials and the Gen Zs, we're very in touch with our feelings. So yes. We've made up for your lack of feelings. The biggest lesson I would say is one that I learned from yourself, awesome. Which is around being open to different opinions, different views, different knowledge. Because, you know, I was very like, no, I only want to see the world through this one lens, and I'm not going to see, and I closed myself off to other people's views. Like, I wouldn't hear them at all. But since like taking that lens off and going, I'm just going to listen to everything. Like, it could be an absolutely absurd person who's just touting things that are just ridiculous, but like, I will listen to them because there'll be something in there that I can probably learn from. Yeah. And so I think in doing that and saying, I'm not going to close myself off to people, one, you become a better listener. And two, it like, you start to have more moments in your life of being amazed by people, right? Like proper listening, you know, so even like some of the things that Sergio has said today, and yourself as well, is I've gone, wow, that's such an interesting insight that I hadn't thought of. Whereas if I was to go, no, I'm just going to stay in my lane and only think about my view of the world and everything else I'm going to close off, it really restricts your ability to grow. So I think, and there'd be many examples of people out there right now not listening to each other, like our politicians. In Australia, we're a shocker for it. We're not listening to people at all. But if
our politicians definitely listen to each other all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are going.
Yes.
But that's the big lesson, I think, that I've learned in the last year, and that our generation needs to, maybe it kind of centers back to what you said about collaborating. We don't need to just be sticking to our generation. Like, let's get together and hear each other properly and see how we can grow from that.
Awesome. All right, you're beautiful. Up, Sergio.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I think Generation Z, as the way I see it, I think living in the moment is something that I, for myself, have really just learned that has been crucial to everything that has gone really well right as of my life. And I mean, I'm 23, so that's not just that much. I still have a lot to learn, but accepting things as they are and living in the moment. As someone who has, you know, spent their time, you know, using technology, you know, on the internet quite a bit, being on social media, it can be a little hard to live in the moment and to live in like just right now, whether that's on social media or not, just being present and not going with the flow. You know, that's a big thing. And I think that the more we accept this moment today, it just betters things, because I feel like overall, just as human beings, we either dwell in like the past or we worry about the future.
Right.
And we don't spend enough time in the present moment, which is the only moment that's really real to us and that we can actually experience and know that is for sure, because I mean, the past is our memories and the future is our imagination. So it's really hard to wrap around ourselves around that.
Yeah.
But I think living in the moment is really just big, and not just, you know, when we're talking to others, but even when we're with our own selves, like being in the moment with our own selves, listening to the sounds that we hear, seeing the things that we experience, like actually using our six senses that were given to us, and you know, being able to do that, it's really been a big thing that I've learned this far.
So how do you practice that?
Well, you know, I think, well, for me, I practice that by, if I catch myself, like, first step is to observe your emotions and observe your thoughts. And this is like where you observe when you go into thinking about the past or when you go into worrying about the future. And it's not about criticizing, like, oh man, I should be more present, but it's about, okay, why did that happen? Like, why did I go into that? Oh, I was thinking about certain things, like my career, or maybe like in the past I was thinking about a relationship that I used to have that just went terribly wrong, and I just, why am I attached to that, you know? And then focusing on like the little things, like maybe for 10 minutes you sit and you visualize yourself and like you just feel. You don't think, you don't try to think. Which is I was recently listening to this book that this is my like fifth time listening to. It's The Power of the Now by Eckhart Tolle. Yes, there we go.
You're speaking
there
our
we go.
language, Sergio.
Yeah, we love Eckhart Tolle.
Adam's a huge Eckhart Tolle fan.
Man, this is like I said, this is my sixth time listening to it. It's part of my morning routine now. Like I have.
Well, when you were speaking, Sergio, I was like, oh, he's totally channeling some Eckhart Tolle. So
yes. Yes, Adam.
I love it.
Oh my goodness, I love it. This makes me so happy, because it's exactly like I've practiced what he said, and like one of the things that he says is like, for 10 minutes, like just feel what you gotta feel. Like don't you know, try to think something, which is interesting because he mentioned something like, if like try to wait for your next thought. And then once you try to wait for your next thought, like kind of like a cat waiting for a mouse to come out of a hole, like you just simply live in the moment. And it's like crazy because
that's true. That
like,
makes a lot of sense.
Your thought won't come in. It's insane, but it's small things like that. Obviously, it's practice, and you know, maybe it'll take a long time for us to absolutely live in the moment, but you know, practice makes permanent, I think. And
I like that. Practice makes permanent. That's awesome.
And I think that we could use living in the moment as like a little tactic for us.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and it's interesting to me too that we all kind of said the same thing in a different way, because we're all talking about living in the moment. I think what's very, and I think I've already used this word already, but inspiring to me is that you guys seem to be learning it a lot younger. And maybe I was just slow at coming around about this. I don't know. But like, these are lessons I have been learning in the past few years. So let's say I didn't start learning these lessons until I was in my late 30s. And maybe that's one huge advantage of it, of the technology actually, is that you guys have access to these things that, not that I wouldn't have access to them, but they wouldn't have been as easy to get. You know, and so, you know, I would have been more focused on just pure entertainment than on learning, or I definitely, at your age, I would not have been listening to Eckhart Tolle. That's for sure. So I just think that that's very encouraging. And it's something that I want all generations, older generations, to know. It's like, these kids got it right. Well, I really think so.
I definitely agree. I think there's some, it's nice to hear, right? So like hearing Sergio, really, you know, you've absorbed the words of Eckhart Tolle, which I think he is just an amazing man. But like, even just looking at our 100%. Kids, as you said before, Amanda, like about they're learning mindfulness, they're learning emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Like, and I constantly say, you know, my 5-year-old is far, far wiser than I am. You know, like I've got so much for lack of a better word, shit that I've got to remove to make myself as pure and wise as my 5-year-old. Yeah. Because she's very much in touch with what the beauty and the magic of the world is. And we lose that. And I think there's hope there. It's nice to see that. I think, okay, these guys are going to get the world back on track. They're going to hope to break all this really negative stuff that has upset and hurt a lot of people, over the years. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel, maybe.
Yeah,
100%, 100%. And I just like those are such truths, because I think that we are all saying the same message. This is why I think we should collaborate as a generation, because we all have experienced the same problems to some degree, maybe just in different forms. And when you said that, Amanda, about millennials and Gen Zs are learning these type of things at an earlier age. I wish I could have learned this at an earlier age. And I'm that's crazy.
I know. And I'm just like, come on, Sergio, are you kidding
me? I wish I could have had the same mindset when I was 15, 16, going to high school. But I think we all experienced it at some point. I definitely think that even people in my generation, there's peers that I talk to that, say like, oh, I wish I could think that way that you do. Or, I wish I had the same mindset, but I'm like, we're the same age. Like, you can have the same mindset. I'm not anymore. I'm not special. I'm just like, it's just how the experiences that I've had in my life put me in this position. I'm sure that we all have different experiences, and we're all eventually going to get to that point where we're like, this clicks, or I should have thought this before. But, going on to Adam's point about the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm a huge believer in positivity. And I think that even though there are a lot of bad things that are highlighted because of the internet, I think that that's just a tiny percent that's being exploded and expanded. Because, you got to get those views, in news, you got to get ratings, and what's going to make ratings, it's going to be the worst things that happen in life. But there's a lot of positivity out there. I think we just got to find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well said.
And I was just reminded of one other thing. What was it? It was something that Sergio said in the beginning. Oh, well, I think too, maybe the reason that you guys are coming to these realizations at an earlier age is because, like you were saying, Sergio, where your generation hasn't had to face a lot of difficulties. I mean, life difficulties, but social difficulties or whatever. I don't know how you want to say that, but that you haven't faced a lot. So you kind of have the privilege of, and I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy because, I'm a Maslow's hierarchy girl. And, at the bottom, you have your physiological and your safety needs. And so I think other generations, especially my parents' generation, they were living in that space a lot of their lives. They didn't have the privilege of being able to think about the kinds of things that we're talking about because they were just trying to live, or survive, I should say. They were just trying to survive. And so I think that's a good message to get out to everyone, is that we are living in a very privileged age. And it's kind of that we realize that and realize that there's no reason that we can't make the world better and make it what we want it to be. Because we're not down there, or at least the three of us, and most people, I would say, that are going to be listening to this or whatever, be influenced by this, they're not in those bottom stages of Maslow's hierarchy. So what do you guys think about that? Any other, we're getting to the end, so any other concluding thoughts?
No, I think Maslow makes sense in that. You're 100% right. Of course, we have all this time to worry about self-actualization and all the really tricky problems, because we don't have to worry about our basic needs.
Right.
It was something that I discovered last week, and there was this guy who talked about it, right? Is when you're getting too consumed in these big thoughts, and what do I need to do to live my purpose? And, just getting consumed by the big picture of your life. He said, go and break yourself in some kind of, go for a run until you're absolutely exhausted. and your brain will switch off completely from all thoughts and go back to that basic needs. You know, I need water, I need rest.
Okay, yeah.
And he's so right. I did that the other day. I was absolutely exhausted, and it completely took me out of that obsession with how can I get myself, you know, into the next career or whatever. So we still have that capability. Like, we don't need to go to war to meet our basic needs. Just go and absolutely break yourself, maybe in a physical capacity, and you will go straight down to the bottom of the pyramid. And, you know, life's easy down there.
No, that would be a great thing to do, though. That makes a lot of sense. So
that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right, final thoughts from Sergio.
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly, another way you could do that is intermittent fasting, which is something that I frankly consistently have done for the past couple of years.
You have?
And, yeah. You know, I've been able to stick with it. I don't know. It just, first of all, it was just one of those things that you're just like, all right, let's try it, you know, because why not? Let's just starve ourselves for half of the day.
Because we're privileged enough to do it, so why not?
Yeah. Also, I was a college student at the time, so, you know, we're trying to save as much money as we can out.
Yeah, so that worked out.
This wasn't a voluntary thing. You were like,
I have to budget. I have to fast. You know, we don't got enough money for breakfast, all 3 meals of the day. But in all seriousness, like, yeah, intermittent fasting, you know, that's something to look forward to, because it puts you in a mindset of like that lower level of hierarchy, like Maslow's hierarchy, because you're hungry. You know, the first 2 weeks is going to be like really hard. You're going to absolutely be like, why are you doing this to yourself? But after that, after you break that, there's a lot of benefits to it, which I'm not going to get into it right now. Maybe that's for another episode, but for right now, that's another way you can put yourself in that lower hierarchy. Intermittent fasting, you know.
Yeah, I never thought of that, because I thought it was more like a health benefits thing. I never thought of the psychological benefits of it. So that's cool. Yeah. So see, learning from Generation Z. That's what it's all about. All right, well, I will wrap things up here unless I think we're all good. Nobody has anything else to say? Okay. All right, so I will wrap things up. First of all, thank you, Sergio, for being here. We really appreciate it. And I hadn't seen Sergio in a long time, so it was nice to see you. Thank you for coming on. And for people, whoever's listening, watching, thank you so much. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, all the stuff that gets us in front of the algorithm gods, because, you know, we need that. We want to get this message out to the most people that we can. So with that being said, we'll just say until next time, cheers to not settling. Take care.